Today we are discussing the credit amnesty. With us in studio today we have Zach King, editor of the Debt-Free Digi magazine. Hi there, Zach.
Hi Mushrika, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Much has been said about the credit amnesty. First things first, should it actually be called a credit amnesty?
No, I think the term that has been thrown around is a credit information amnesty, and it's a bit misleading. It actually relates to a regulation talking about the removal of adverse consumer credit information. But that sounds like a lot of words, so people are just dumbing it down, as it were, to use the words credit information amnesty.
Okay, let's get one thing straight. Does the credit amnesty mean that your debt will be removed from the credit bureaus?
No, what's actually been removed is some information about your debt or the status of your debt, but not the debt itself. People are still liable for their debt, and yet some information, not all information, but just a little bit, is going to disappear.
So the credit amnesty is not some magic wand that's going to come and make everybody's life so much more pleasant, and they're not going to be having any more debt?
No, absolutely. People are still going to have to pay their debt. Your debt is still going to be there, sadly. But it is going to presumably help in one or two small ways. Not obvious ways at first, but it will have some long-term benefits for consumers.
How will the credit amnesty help consumers?
Well, what's happening at the moment, for instance, to give you an example, someone applies for a rental agreement with an agent, and the agent says, well, I'm going to check your credit bureau report. And they draw the credit bureau report, and like everybody, there's debt sitting there. It's shown on the report. And in the past, the report sometimes used certain phrases that were a bit negative about consumers, like slow payer, or even delinquent, or in default. And people who weren't very familiar with credit bureau reports would find those terms, those descriptions, to imply bad things about you as a person. And so they might then turn you down for an application. Whereas if that information was removed, they got the credit bureau report, they would see what accounts you have outstanding, but there wouldn't be those funny little terms or maybe a little mark next to your name with a frowny face, something along those lines that would perhaps dissuade them from favoring you in a certain decision. So that stuff is now going to disappear. Certain phrases like that won't be used. The information about the payments each month will still be there, but those phrases that could cause problems are going to be gone.
Something that is huge with the credit amnesty is the removal of judgment. The removal of judgment from your name. Something that has to be made clear is that the only time that this judgment will be removed from your name is if the debt has been paid. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Would you care just to expand on that?
Well, what's happened in the past is, let's say we owed somebody some money and we weren't able to pay them at first, and the company went out and got a judgment against us. Over time, we would slowly pay that debt back. But for years and years and years, the record of that debt, even once it was paid up, would stay there. So years later, someone is looking at your credit bureau report, and maybe 5 years later they have a look and they see, oh, once upon a time you had a judgment. And that may then also negatively impact on you as a consumer. So in an effort to incentivize people to settle those past judgments, the new regulation says that once that information is paid, or that debt, the principal debt is paid up, that will fall away on the bureau report. You won't be able to see it anymore. You won't have to wait months and months and months. It will automatically be removed. And that will now be done by the credit providers and the credit bureaus, rather than a consumer having to go to court and say, please take this information away.
Okay, so does a consumer in South Africa, anywhere, have to apply for credit amnesty or credit information amnesty? Is there a process that needs to be followed, or is the onus now on the credit provider and the credit bureaus?
Yeah, absolutely. The consumers, we can sit back and relax. The credit bureaus have a lot of work.
The consumers who have paid their debt,
well,
where judgments are
yes.
concerned.
But as far as this information amnesty is concerned, there's no onus on the consumer, other than to check after a while to see if it's actually been applied. The government has given credit bureaus and the credit providers a couple of months to get things together. It started on the 1st of April, an unfortunate date, but perhaps moving on from that time, they've got about 3 months to try get everything removed with these terms and those past information about stuff that's paid up. and hopefully they will get that done in time. If they don't, they can even go and apply to the government and ask for a little more time, but hopefully they won't need to do that.
So we are also saying that if you have a judgment against your name at a credit bureau with a certain credit provider, if you have not paid up that debt, that judgment will not be removed from the credit bureaus, from the blacklist, so to say. Is that true?
Yeah, that judgment stays in force. In fact, any court judgment stays in force for 30 years. So they can, over the next 30 years from the time of that judgment, try to enforce it by fixing assets and things along those lines. But the information about it will only be removed once you have brought that account up to where it should be. You've settled the principal debt.